The moment an officer forgets respect, the badge begins to lose its meaning. The words drifted through the cool morning air just seconds before everything changed. Downtown Ashcroft was waking up beneath a pale October sky, where the first rays of sunlight reflected softly against rows of glass office buildings and the polished windows of City Hall. Commuters hurried across crosswalks carrying paper coffee cups, delivery trucks rumbled past storefronts preparing to open, and the familiar rhythm of another ordinary Tuesday settled over the city. Outside the Ashcroft Police Headquarters, several patrol officers gathered near the front entrance, laughing loudly as they traded stories from the overnight shift. Their navy uniforms looked crisp beneath the American flag fluttering above the station, yet their confidence carried an edge that made younger officers instinctively keep their distance. Officer Ethan Walker stood at the center of the group with the relaxed posture of someone convinced the building belonged to him. Beside him, Officer Kyle Bennett leaned against a patrol SUV, sipping coffee while Sergeant Richard Cole reviewed paperwork without appearing to notice much of anything. Across the street, a teenage boy nervously held his bicycle beside the curb after nearly colliding with a police vehicle while rushing to school. His backpack rested crookedly over one shoulder, and his breathing came fast as he repeatedly apologized. Walker barely listened. His expression hardened before he stepped forward with the unmistakable certainty of someone who expected immediate obedience. The boy lowered his eyes, gripping the bicycle handles tighter. Before another word could be exchanged, a calm female voice interrupted from several yards away. He already apologized. Let him get to school. Every conversation outside the station paused for just a heartbeat. Heads turned toward the sidewalk where a black woman walked steadily toward the entrance wearing a simple dark police uniform without visible rank insignia. Her patrol cap shaded thoughtful brown eyes that quietly observed everything around her. Her name tag had been removed, leaving only a clean strip of fabric. Across her chest, no ribbons decorated her uniform. No polished stars rested on her shoulders. She carried no briefcase, no ceremony. Nothing that suggested importance beyond the quiet confidence in her stride. The morning breeze lifted a loose strand of her neatly tied hair as she stopped beside the frightened teenager. You should head to class, she told him gently. Your future matters more than standing here afraid. The boy hesitated before nodding gratefully. Walker stepped into her path, irritation replacing amusement almost instantly. Nobody asked for your opinion, he said with a dismissive laugh. Several officers nearby smirked, assuming she must be a transfer, a civilian employee, or someone assigned temporary duty. The woman remained composed. Sometimes the right thing doesn't wait for permission, she answered evenly. A brief silence settled over the entrance. Bennett exchanged an amused glance with another officer. Someone quietly muttered that she must not understand how things worked around this precinct. Walker folded his arms and took another step closer, expecting her to back away like so many others had before. She didn't move an inch. Her breathing remained slow and steady, her attention fixed not on his anger, but on the frightened teenagers still standing only a few feet away. Around them, more pedestrians slowed their pace. A woman walking her dog paused across the street. A delivery driver leaned against his truck. Two college students instinctively lifted their phones, sensing they were witnessing something unusual. The city seemed to grow strangely still. Even the distant traffic faded beneath the quiet tension gathering outside the station doors. Walker made a sharp, dismissive gesture toward the woman, treating her presence as an inconvenience rather than a fellow officer deserving basic respect. Her patrol cap slipped from her head and landed quietly on the concrete. Nobody spoke. Nobody laughed anymore. The woman simply looked down, bent calmly to retrieve the cap, brushed away a trace of dust with measured care, and placed it back on her head without a hint of anger crossing her face. Then she looked directly into Walker's eyes and spoke with a calmness that unsettled everyone listening. I hope, she said softly, this isn't how your department welcomes people. The words lingered in the crisp autumn air far longer than anyone expected, and somewhere beyond the front gates, the low sound of approaching sirens slowly echoed toward the station. Naomi Brooks stood quietly as the last echoes of the morning confrontation dissolved into the steady rhythm of downtown traffic. She did not glance back at the officers gathered near the entrance. Instead, she looked toward the teenage boy, who had finally found the courage to walk his bicycle across the intersection, disappearing into the stream of students heading toward Ashcroft Central High School. A faint smile crossed her face for only a second before it disappeared beneath the calm discipline she had practiced for most of her life. She understood something many people never did. Fear spread quickly, but dignity traveled farther. The cool autumn breeze carried the scent of damp pavement and fresh coffee through the streets as she adjusted the cuffs of her uniform with careful precision. Every crease had been pressed before sunrise. Every button reflected the morning light. Her father had taught her years ago that people noticed the smallest details long before they listened to the biggest truths. James Brooks had worn the same badge for nearly 25 years before losing his life while protecting complete strangers during a warehouse fire on the east side of the city. Naomi had been 14 years old when officers arrived at her mother's front door, wearing solemn expressions that needed no explanation. She still remembered the polished shoes standing on the porch, the folded American flag resting carefully inside a wooden display case, and her mother's trembling hands refusing to let go of it for hours. That morning changed everything. While other children dreamed about becoming doctors, athletes, or entertainers, Naomi made a quiet promise beside her father's memorial service that she would one day wear the same uniform without ever allowing fear, anger, or prejudice to define the person inside it. The promise had guided every decision that followed. She graduated near the top of her criminal justice class, completed the police academy with distinction, earned assignments that many officers twice her age never reached, and later transferred into federal investigative work where discipline mattered more than recognition. Her case files became known for patience rather than speed. Witnesses trusted her because she listened before speaking. Victims remembered her because she treated every person with equal respect regardless of where they lived or what they looked like. More than once, she quietly turned down promotions that would have placed politics ahead of public service. Her reputation grew anyway. People who worked beside her often described the same quality. Naomi never raised her voice simply because someone else already had. She believed authority was strongest when it remained calm. That belief had earned admiration from some and resentment from others. Several city leaders had spent months searching for someone capable of rebuilding public confidence after years of complaints involving misconduct, favoritism, and broken trust inside the Ashcroft Police Department. Internal reports filled entire filing cabinets. Anonymous letters described officers who believed accountability only applied to other people. Community meetings ended with frustration instead of solutions. The mayor wanted reform without headlines. The police commissioner wanted leadership without excuses. Together, they had reached the same conclusion. Change would never arrive through another speech. It required someone willing to walk into the culture before trying to change it. That was why Naomi had accepted the assignment under one unusual condition. No formal announcement before her first day. No welcoming ceremony. No advance introduction to command staff. She wanted to see the department exactly as it behaved when nobody believed an important visitor was watching. She had arrived wearing the same standard uniform every patrol officer recognized, deliberately removing every visible sign of rank so respect would be measured by character instead of insignia. As the faint sound of approaching sirens grew louder, beyond the station gates, Naomi slowly slipped one hand into her uniform pocket and gently touched the folded appointment letter she had carried since leaving City Hall before dawn. The paper remained crisp, untouched, waiting for the moment when titles would finally matter far less than the truth she had already witnessed with her own eyes. The growing wail of approaching sirens rolled through downtown Ashcroft before fading beneath the steady hum of idling patrol vehicles outside headquarters. Officers instinctively glanced toward the front gate, expecting another routine arrival, but no emergency vehicles entered the parking lot. The brief distraction quickly passed, and conversations resumed with the same careless confidence that had settled over the station for years. Inside the building, fluorescent lights reflected across polished tile floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Framed photographs of former police chiefs lined the main hallway beside plaques celebrating bravery, sacrifice, and public service. Yet the atmosphere beneath those symbols told a different story. Rookie officers walked with measured caution, lowering their voices whenever certain supervisors approached. Civilian employees exchanged polite smiles but avoided unnecessary conversations. Even dispatchers behind the glass partition seemed to choose their words carefully before speaking into their radios. Naomi noticed every detail without appearing to study any of them. Experience had taught her that culture revealed itself in silence long before it appeared in official reports. Officer Ethan Walker stepped through the lobby doors carrying himself with effortless authority, greeting colleagues with loud confidence that suggested rules were flexible whenever they inconvenienced him. Kyle Bennett followed closely behind, joking with another patrol officer about complaints filed by neighborhood residents during the previous weekend. Their laughter echoed through the reception area before disappearing down the hallway. Sergeant Richard Cole emerged from his office moments later holding a clipboard beneath one arm. Unlike Walker, he rarely raised his voice. He simply watched. That quiet reputation made younger officers even more nervous because everyone understood that his approval often determined assignments, overtime opportunities, and career advancement. No written policy gave him that influence. Years of habit had. Naomi quietly entered the lobby several minutes later, carrying only a small folder beneath her arm. The receptionist looked up briefly before returning to her computer screen without offering a greeting. A maintenance worker pushing a supply cart smiled politely as they crossed paths. Naomi returned the smile without slowing her pace. Near the hallway leading toward the briefing rooms, she overheard two newer officers speaking in hushed voices. One asked whether another internal affairs complaint had disappeared without consequences. The other responded with a tired shrug before noticing Walker approaching from around the corner. Their conversation ended immediately. Neither officer looked comfortable. Walker noticed Naomi standing nearby and offered a dismissive glance before continuing past her without acknowledging her presence. To him, she remained another unfamiliar face wearing an ordinary uniform, someone who would eventually learn how things supposedly worked inside his department. Naomi continued observing. Bulletin boards displayed community outreach posters covered by newer announcements about staffing shortages and mandatory overtime. A framed mission statement promised integrity, fairness, and accountability to every citizen regardless of race, background, or circumstance. Dust had gathered along the lower edge of the frame. She paused for only a second before walking on. In one interview years earlier, a retired chief had told her something she never forgot. Every police department has two rule books. One hangs on the wall. The other lives inside the people. Discover the second one first. Only then can you understand the first. Those words echoed quietly through her thoughts as she reached the large conference room overlooking the front parking lot. Through the tall windows, she could see officers continuing their morning routines beneath the bright autumn sun, unaware that every casual conversation, every impatient gesture, and every quiet decision had already become part of a much larger picture. Somewhere down the corridor, a clock struck exactly 8:30. At nearly the same moment, the elevator doors opened on the top floor, and several city officials stepped out carrying folders marked with the city seal, walking calmly toward the conference room where the future of the Ashcroft Police Department was about to begin. The conference room overlooked the entire front plaza, its floor-to-ceiling windows filling the space with cool autumn sunlight that reflected across the polished oak table. Empty leather chairs waited in perfect rows while a digital clock quietly counted the passing seconds. Naomi Brooks stood near the windows with both hands resting loosely behind her back, her posture calm, her breathing steady, her attention focused on the officers gathering below. From this height, she could clearly see the same entrance where she had quietly intervened only minutes earlier. Nothing about her expression suggested anger. Instead, she watched with the patience of someone assembling a puzzle one piece at a time. Behind her, the elevator doors opened again. Mayor Daniel Whitmore entered first, followed by Police Commissioner Helen Ramirez, the city attorney, and two members of the Civilian Oversight Board. They greeted Naomi warmly, but she raised one hand with a polite smile before anyone could speak loudly enough to carry beyond the conference room walls. "Please," she said softly, "give me just a few more minutes." Commissioner Ramirez understood immediately. She glanced through the glass toward the lobby below before giving a quiet nod. "You are still observing." Naomi answered with a small smile. The first impression is always the honest one. No one questioned her decision. Instead, the officials remained inside the room, speaking quietly among themselves while Naomi continued watching the department move through what everyone else believed was another ordinary morning. Downstairs, Ethan Walker strolled through the lobby carrying a folder tucked beneath one arm. He noticed the woman in the plain uniform once again standing near the administrative hallway. His expression tightened with visible annoyance. "You are still here?" he asked as he approached. Naomi turned toward him with the same calm composure she had maintained since sunrise. "I was told the morning briefing begins soon." Walker gave a short laugh that drew the attention of several nearby officers. People do not just wander into restricted areas because they heard about a meeting. Naomi met his eyes without raising her voice. "I am simply waiting where I was instructed." Bennett walked over carrying another cup of coffee, immediately sensing an opportunity for amusement. "Maybe she is lost," he joked. A few officers smiled politely, although none sounded completely comfortable. Naomi neither defended herself nor argued. Instead, she looked around the lobby, taking quiet notice of every face now watching the exchange. She recognized uncertainty in some, embarrassment in others, and silent agreement from a few who seemed unwilling to challenge the louder voices around them. Experience had taught her that leadership was rarely revealed by the people speaking the most. It was revealed by those choosing whether to stand beside right or wrong when neither option felt comfortable. Walker pointed toward the public seating area near the entrance. "If you are waiting for someone, wait over there until somebody comes for you." His words were firm, but Naomi simply inclined her head with quiet courtesy. "Thank you for your suggestion." She walked exactly where he pointed without a trace of resentment, taking a seat beneath a large framed photograph of officers participating in a community charity event. Children smiled brightly in the picture. The slogan beneath it read, "Building trust every day." Naomi studied the photograph for several silent moments before lowering her eyes to the folded appointment letter still resting inside her pocket. She did not remove it. She did not need to. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. Across the lobby, a young patrol officer named Lucas Reed watched everything unfold while pretending to organize paperwork at the reception desk. Unlike the others, he remembered hearing stories about Naomi Brooks during academy training. A federal investigator, a reform specialist, a leader known for visiting departments without announcing herself. He looked carefully at the woman sitting quietly beneath the photograph, then toward the conference room windows high above the lobby where silhouettes of city officials could now be seen gathering behind the glass. His heartbeat quickened. The pieces suddenly fit together. Before he could say a single word, the building's intercom chimed softly. A clear voice echoed through every hallway. "Attention, all personnel. Mandatory department assembly will begin in 5 minutes. Attendance is required immediately." The lobby fell completely silent. The soft tone of the intercom faded, leaving an unfamiliar stillness hanging over the station. Conversation stopped in mid-sentence. Coffee cups were quietly set aside. Computer keyboards fell silent one by one as officers began making their way toward the main assembly room. Nobody questioned the order. Mandatory gatherings called by City Hall almost never happened without a serious reason. Naomi Brooks remained seated beneath the framed community photograph for another moment, her hands resting calmly in her lap as dozens of uniforms passed in front of her. Some officers looked at her with curiosity. Others barely noticed her at all. A few exchanged knowing smiles, convinced the unfamiliar woman would soon be escorted away once supervisors realized she did not belong there. Naomi offered nothing in return except quiet patience. She had learned long ago that people often revealed their true character while believing no one important was watching. Officer Ethan Walker slowed as he reached the hallway leading toward the assembly room. He glanced back over his shoulder and noticed Naomi still sitting exactly where he had directed her. For reasons even he could not explain, her calmness unsettled him more than any argument could have. Most people responded to public embarrassment with anger, fear, or frustration. She had responded with none of them. It felt almost as though she had expected every moment to unfold exactly as it had. Walker frowned before turning towards Sergeant Richard Cole. "Should somebody check her credentials before this meeting starts?" Cole looked briefly across the lobby without stopping his stride. "If she wandered into the wrong building, reception can deal with it afterward. We have bigger priorities." The answer sounded practical, but even Cole noticed something unusual. The woman never appeared nervous. She never searched for an exit. She never reached for her phone. Instead, she quietly observed the department with the calm attention of someone collecting information rather than seeking approval. Near the reception desk, Officer Lucas Reed continued organizing paperwork while secretly watching the scene unfold. The memories from the police academy became clearer with every passing minute. Guest instructors had described a respected federal investigator who believed the fastest way to understand an organization was to experience it without announcing authority. They had spoken about her ability to uncover problems hidden beneath polished reports and impressive statistics simply by watching how people treated those they believed carried no influence. Lucas felt a chill despite the warm building. He wanted to speak. He wanted to warn someone. Yet uncertainty held him silent because he had never actually met Naomi Brooks before today. What if he was wrong? Across the station, dispatch operators received a message confirming that city officials had already entered the building through the executive entrance upstairs. The information quietly spread from desk to desk until whispers replaced casual conversation. Officers straightened their uniforms. Supervisors checked nameplates and collars. The atmosphere shifted from relaxed confidence to careful professionalism in less than a minute. Naomi slowly stood and adjusted her patrol cap once more. She reached into her pocket only long enough to confirm the folded appointment letter remained exactly where she had placed it before sunrise. Then she walked toward the assembly room at an unhurried pace, blending naturally into the line of officers heading in the same direction. No one stopped her. No one asked another question. Sunlight poured through the tall hallway windows, stretching long golden reflections across the polished floor as nearly every member of the Ashcroft Police Department gathered inside the large briefing hall. At the front of the room, a wide stage stood beneath the American flag and the department seal. Several empty chairs waited beside a wooden podium bearing the city emblem. One by one, officers filled the rows, their voices growing quieter with every passing second. Then the side door near the stage opened, and Mayor Daniel Whitmore entered alongside Commissioner Helen Ramirez and members of the Civilian Oversight Board. Without a single word, every person in the room rose to their feet. Only one chair remained empty on the stage, waiting for the final person who had not yet been introduced. Silence settled across the assembly hall with a weight that no one could explain. Nearly 200 officers stood facing the stage beneath the bright lights, their polished badges catching narrow beams of morning sun that filtered through the tall windows overlooking downtown Ashcroft. Outside, the American flag moved gently in the autumn breeze, but inside the room, even the quiet rustle of uniform sleeves seemed unusually loud. Mayor Daniel Whitmore exchanged a brief glance with Commissioner Helen Ramirez before stepping behind the wooden podium. He rested both hands on its polished edges and slowly surveyed the faces before him. Some officers appeared confident. Others shifted their weight from one foot to the other without understanding why. Ethan Walker stood near the front beside Sergeant Richard Cole and Kyle Bennett, each wearing the composed expression expected during an official ceremony. Yet Walker could not completely dismiss the image of the unfamiliar woman he had encountered throughout the morning. Something about her calm voice continued to linger in the back of his mind. She had never argued. She had never defended herself. She had simply observed. That memory felt strangely heavier now than it had only minutes earlier. In the third row, Officer Lucas Reed kept looking toward the side entrance near the stage. His pulse quickened with every passing second. He remembered another detail from the academy lecture that had returned to him only moments before. The instructor had once said that true leaders rarely announce themselves before listening. They preferred to understand the people first, because respect earned naturally lasted longer than respect demanded by rank. Lucas wondered whether he was about to witness exactly what that lesson had meant. Commissioner Ramirez quietly checked the time before giving a subtle nod toward the side corridor. No announcement followed. No music played. Instead, another long pause filled the room. It was the kind of silence that caused people to notice their own breathing. Somewhere near the back of the hall, an air conditioning vent released a gentle current that stirred the edge of an American flag standing beside the stage. The fabric moved slowly, almost peacefully, reminding Naomi Brooks of something her father had once told her as they watched a parade together many years earlier. He had smiled, and said that the strongest symbols never needed to shout because people recognized them through the values they represented. Standing just beyond the closed side door, Naomi rested one hand lightly against the folded appointment letter still inside her pocket. She did not need to read it again. Every word had already become part of her responsibility. She closed her eyes for only a moment, drawing one slow breath before opening them once more. Anger had no place in the room she was about to enter. Neither did pride. She had not accepted this position to prove anyone wrong. She had accepted it because an entire community deserved a police department that inspired confidence instead of uncertainty. Through the narrow window in the door, she could see rows of officers waiting without realizing how much the next few minutes would reshape every assumption they carried into work that morning. Behind her, Mayor Whitmore's voice finally broke the silence. Every generation of public servants is given an opportunity to decide what kind of legacy it will leave behind. Buildings grow old. Equipment is replaced. Policies are rewritten. But character becomes history. His words echoed gently through the hall before another pause followed. No one moved. No. One whispered. Sunlight stretched farther across the stage until it reached the final empty chair waiting beside the podium. At that exact moment, Commissioner Ramirez turned toward the side entrance, placed one hand on the door handle, and opened it with quiet confidence as every eye in the room instinctively shifted in the same direction. The side door opened without ceremony, and Naomi Brooks stepped into the assembly hall with the same quiet composure she had carried since sunrise. Every polished shoe echoed softly against the hardwood floor as she walked toward the stage, her ordinary patrol uniform unchanged, her expression steady, her pace unhurried. At first, only a handful of officers recognized the woman they had seen outside the station that morning. Then one face after another stiffened with disbelief. Officer Lucas Reed lowered his eyes for a brief moment, realizing his suspicion had been correct all along. Ethan Walker stared without blinking. Kyle Bennett slowly set his coffee cup onto the nearest chair, almost forgetting it was still in his hand. Sergeant Richard Cole remained perfectly still, but the confidence that usually defined his posture quietly disappeared. Naomi climbed the short steps to the stage and stopped beside the empty chair that had waited beneath the American flag. Commissioner Helen Ramirez greeted her with a respectful handshake before stepping aside. Mayor Daniel Whitmore smiled warmly, then faced the room once again. His voice carried clearly across every row of officers. This morning, many of you believed you were beginning another ordinary shift. In reality, today marks the beginning of a new chapter for this department and for the community it serves. He paused, allowing the words to settle naturally. Over the past year, our city conducted a nationwide search for a leader with unquestionable integrity, exceptional investigative experience, and a lifelong commitment to public trust. After careful consideration, the city council voted unanimously to appoint that leader. He turned toward Naomi with unmistakable pride. Please join me in welcoming the new chief of the Ashcroft Police Department, Chief Naomi Brooks. The room became so quiet that the faint hum of the ceiling lights seemed unusually loud. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Every officer who had crossed paths with Naomi that morning suddenly replayed those moments in painful clarity. Walker felt the color drain from his face as memory after memory returned with startling precision. He remembered dismissing her words. He remembered directing her toward the waiting area without offering the courtesy he routinely expected from others. More than anything, he remembered the calm way she had responded, never once revealing who she truly was. Bennett stared at the stage in complete disbelief, searching Naomi's uniform for the insignia that had not been there earlier. Only now did he understand why. She had wanted to see the department before rank changed every conversation. Sergeant Cole slowly lowered his eyes, recognizing that every quiet decision made throughout the morning had unfolded exactly as the new chief intended. This had never been a test of procedures. It had been a test of character. Naomi stepped to the podium, but did not unfold the prepared remarks resting there. Instead, she looked across the room with calm, thoughtful eyes, meeting the gaze of rookies, veterans, supervisors, dispatchers, civilian staff, and command officers alike. There was disappointment in her heart, but no bitterness. There was authority in her voice, but no arrogance. Before I speak about the future, she said gently, I want to thank every officer in this room who has chosen respect when no one was watching. Those moments rarely make headlines, yet they are the foundation of public trust. Her eyes rested briefly on Walker before moving calmly across the audience again. This morning taught me more about this department than any report ever could. Reports describe policies. People reveal culture. No one looked away. In that silent room beneath the flag they had all sworn to honor, every badge suddenly felt a little heavier than it had only an hour before. No one applauded when Chief Naomi Brooks stepped away from the podium. The silence itself carried far greater weight than any standing ovation could have. Every officer remained exactly where they stood, surrounded by the quiet realization that the morning had exposed far more than anyone expected. Sunlight continued to pour through the tall windows, stretching across the polished floor until it reached the front row where Ethan Walker stood motionless. His confidence had disappeared, replaced by something unfamiliar. Reflection. He slowly lowered his eyes, replaying each decision he had made since sunrise. None of them could be blamed on confusion. None could be explained away as misunderstanding. They had all been choices. Naomi allowed the silence to linger before speaking again. Accountability begins with honesty, she said, her voice calm enough that every word carried effortlessly through the room. Not honesty that protects a reputation. Honesty that protects the public. She rested both hands lightly on the podium. Effective immediately, every complaint currently marked unresolved will be reviewed by an independent team. Every body camera record connected to those cases will be examined. Every recommendation will be based on evidence, policy, and fairness. No one will receive special treatment, and no one will be judged without facts. Several officers exchanged uncertain glances, but Naomi continued before anyone could interrupt. Justice is not measured by how quickly we punish people. It is measured by whether every person receives the same standard. Commissioner Helen Ramirez nodded quietly beside the stage, recognizing that Naomi was establishing something far more important than new procedures. She was establishing trust. Walker finally raised his hand slightly. The movement surprised even him. Every eye turned in his direction as he slowly stood a little straighter. "Chief Brooks," he said carefully, "may I speak?" Naomi met his eyes without hesitation. "You may." Walker took a slow breath. The words did not come easily. "This morning, I made assumptions before I knew who you were. Looking back, I realized that should not matter. Respect should never depend on rank." His voice remained steady, but the confidence behind it had changed completely. "I cannot change what already happened, but I can acknowledge it." Without making excuses, the room remained silent. No one expected Naomi to respond with anger. No one expected immediate forgiveness either. She simply nodded once. "Acknowledging a mistake is the first step," she replied. "Learning from it is the second. Living differently tomorrow is the third. That is how character is built." Walker slowly sat down again, understanding that the conversation was no longer about him alone. Around the room, several officers quietly reflected on their own decisions, some visible, others known only to themselves. Rookie officers watched carefully, realizing they were witnessing the kind of leadership no academy textbook could fully explain. Lucas Reed felt a quiet sense of hope replace the uncertainty he had carried throughout the morning. For the first time since joining the department, he believed the words printed on the mission statement outside the lobby might actually become reality. Mayor Whitmore stepped forward once more and looked across the assembly hall with visible satisfaction. The city had hired a police chief. Instead, it had found someone capable of changing an entire culture one decision at a time. Naomi gathered the folder resting on the podium, but left the prepared speech untouched. She had never needed it. The truth she wanted every officer to remember had already been written in the choices they had witnessed that morning. And as the sunlight illuminated the department seal behind her, the room no longer felt like the beginning of another workday. It felt like the beginning of accountability earned through integrity rather than authority. 6 months later, the first light of spring spilled gently across the front steps of the Ashcroft Police Department, bathing the old brick building in warm shades of gold instead of the cold autumn light that had greeted Naomi Brooks on her first morning. The city was already awake. Children laughed as they walked toward school carrying oversized backpacks. Shop owners unlocked their front doors. A city bus rolled quietly past the station while neighbors waved to officers patrolling the sidewalks on foot. The atmosphere felt different now, not because the building had changed, but because the people inside it had. New community programs filled the lobby, bulletin boards where forgotten notices had once gathered dust. Citizen meetings that had once ended in frustration were now filled with honest conversations and practical solutions. The complaint review process had become transparent. Training sessions focused as much on listening as enforcement. Young recruits learned that every interaction, no matter how ordinary it seemed, represented the reputation of the entire department. Chief Naomi Brooks had insisted that professionalism could never be separated from compassion, and slowly, day after day, those principles became habits instead of slogans. Officer Lucas Reed now helped mentor incoming academy graduates, reminding each class that respect should never be reserved for people with important titles. He often repeated a lesson he had witnessed with his own eyes. You never know who someone is, but you always know who you choose to be. The words quietly spread through the department until they became part of its culture. Ethan Walker had changed as well. The internal review had been fair, thorough, and consistent with department policy. He accepted every recommendation without argument and completed additional leadership and community engagement training before returning to active duty under close evaluation. More importantly, he changed the way he greeted every person who entered the station, whether they wore a uniform, business attire, work boots, or ordinary clothes. He learned that courtesy required no permission and that humility strengthened authority rather than weakened it. One bright morning, the same teenage boy with the bicycle stopped outside the station on his way to school. This time he smiled before locking his bicycle near the entrance. Walker happened to be walking outside at that exact moment. He opened the front door and greeted the teenager with a warm smile. "Good morning. Have a great day at school." The young man smiled back. "Thank you, officer." The exchange lasted only a few seconds, but Naomi noticed it from her office window overlooking the front plaza. She did not interrupt. She simply watched as the door closed gently behind them. Some victories never appeared in reports because they happened quietly inside ordinary moments. She stepped away from the window and entered her office, where sunlight rested across the polished wooden desk beside a carefully framed photograph of her father wearing his police uniform. Beneath the photograph stood the folded American flag her family had received years earlier. Naomi gently straightened the frame before placing her own patrol cap beside it. She looked through the office window one last time as officers crossed the parking lot beneath the waving flag, speaking with neighbors, helping visitors find the right office, and greeting one another with genuine respect. No speeches filled the hallway. No applause echoed through the building. There was only the steady rhythm of people doing the right thing when no one expected recognition. Naomi smiled quietly, switched off the office light, and walked into the hallway where every officer she passed paused to offer a respectful greeting, not because of the stars on her shoulders, but because of the example she had chosen to set. Behind her, the morning sun reflected softly across the department seal mounted on the wall, and for the first time in many years, the silence inside the Ashcroft Police Department no longer felt heavy. It felt like peace. This is the end of our story. Thank you so much for visiting our channel and spending your time with us. We truly appreciate every view, every comment, and every moment you share with our stories. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like to support our channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Your support means the world to us and motivates us to keep creating more high-quality stories for you. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next video.